Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today we're going to be looking at some state polls that we've done with SoCal Research and a recent poll for Michigan and what it shows for 2024. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. And so essentially we see here in the latest national poll, Donald Trump leads by 6 points in a head-to-head. Kamala Harris does about 2 points worse. Donald Trump leads by 8 in that sample. We can go down here and basically see that Joe Biden is leading Donald Trump by 5 points in the 2020 sample, which would indicate an overestimation of Democrats by a single point in the popular vote. If you adjusted for that, Donald Trump would be up by 7 in this poll against Joe Biden and up 9 points against Kamala Harris. This also does not even factor in third-party candidates. And Trump has actually gained about a 3-point lead since the previous poll. He actually ended up being ahead by 3 points in the first head-to-head we did after the debate on June 27th. Now he leads by 6, so he gained 3 points since that last poll, literally just a mere 20 days before this one was conducted. So I actually find that pretty interesting myself. Now what's interesting here is that we actually see that he's pretty competitive with 18 to 29-year-olds. He completely flipped the 30 to 44 category by a bunch. He's competitive with 45 to 64, and it's interesting that Joe Biden actually leads that group because Trump actually won this group last time, but then Trump is improving with 65 plus. So that is a good sign for him. We look at the New York poll we did, and Biden and Harris lead Trump by 12 points exactly, basically the exact same vote count. They basically run with each other even in the state of New York. This doesn't even factor in for third-party candidates. And we look at the sample, Joe Biden's ahead by 20 points. So this would indicate that Joe Biden would actually be up by 14 points. But if you were to factor in third-party candidates, and Kennedy's actually confirmed to be on the ballot here now, we'd actually have probably anywhere from a 9 to 11 point victory for Joe Biden in the state of New York, which would sort of line up with an R+7 national environment, give or take. I mean, his victory would have to probably be a little bit smaller than that, but that's actually around where that would actually kind of be. We just conducted a Pennsylvania poll literally just today and yesterday, and Donald Trump leads by 4 percentage points. Now, if we look over here, the 2020 sample is actually D+2. Joe Biden actually won the state by only 1 point. So if we adjust for that error in this sample, we actually end up getting Donald Trump leading both Biden and Harris by 5 points in the state of Pennsylvania. And if you were to factor in for third-party candidates, Donald Trump could be up here anywhere up to 6 to 8 points in the state, which would sort of line up with an R+6, R+7 national environment. So all of the latest, state polls kind of correlate with the national poll to an extent, which I think is very, very fascinating. And if we were to basically map this out, R+8 Pennsylvania, D+11 New York, and the national environment is like R+, let's say it's because he's leading by 6, and in the last one, it was R+3. That third-party matchup was R+6. So let's say the national environment is R+9 or so, right? If we were to have an R+9 national environment and Pennsylvania is basically running even with the nation essentially, it's like R+5 to 8 or something like that, within that range, that means Pennsylvania is trending to the left by a pretty decent amount, which would probably indicate more than likely that white suburban voters would probably be shifting to the left by a decent amount. But if New York is only D+11, that would indicate that some Hispanics are shifting to the right. So states like Texas and Florida would probably be over 15-point victories. And from here, we could kind of fill this out. North Carolina would probably be a likely state, including Georgia. At that point, we could even say Arizona and Nevada are probably even likely states. The aggregate has Donald Trump up in the state of Arizona by 7.2 percentage points. And with its leftward trend, it voting to the left of the nation would probably make sense. If we look at Nevada, we actually probably would expect a decent victory here. Probably a little bit over the 9-point victory of the national popular vote. States like California would probably be closer. States like Washington, Oregon would get competitive somewhere within the 15-point category. Hawaii would also be a little bit closer. So would the state of Alaska. We would probably see, Massachusetts, Maryland, Vermont, DC state in that safe column for Joe Biden. We may even see states like, Connecticut, Delaware, Rhode Island get under the 15-point category. Maine's first would definitely be under 15 points. Maine's second would more than likely be a safe state at this point in time. And Donald Trump has already won the Electoral College in this scenario. He already has 287 Electoral College votes as of right now. If the nation is shifting to R+9, that would be a 13-point shift to the right of the nation. And since Hispanic voters are trending to the right, that would actually be a pretty good sign for Donald Trump in the state of New Mexico. That would also put states like Minnesota in that lead in our column. Same thing for Virginia. These states are trending to the left, but not necessarily by enough to basically counter an R+9 national environment. Now, maybe they are tilt states. They could possibly be tilt due to the fact that Pennsylvania is kind of trending to the left. And if that was the case, states like Maryland may not move to the right as much. Virginia may be a little bit closer, and so would Minnesota. But even at R+9, even if those states were to trend a few more points Democrat, I still would expect them to flip, even if the national environment was R+9. We also see Wisconsin and Michigan would more than likely be in that likely column. States like Colorado would probably be under 5 points at this point in time. Illinois would probably be under 5 points. Same thing for New Jersey. That may even become competitive, but I don't think it would trend that much to the right. And then effectively Nebraska second. That district was redrawn to be a little bit more Republican, so it would actually make sense for it to be in the likely column. It voted by a 6-point margin when the national environment was D+4, so it basically votes 2 points to the left of the nation. So the nation is R+9, more than likely a 7-point victory there for Donald Trump would be the most realistic scenario. And when we even look here, we actually see Maine at large end up being probably maybe till Biden due to ranked choice voting. And then New Hampshire could possibly either be lean or till. It just kind of depends. But effectively, we could get anywhere from 347 electoral votes to Joe Biden with 197 and Donald Trump at 341. I think really the only true toss-ups here are probably Maine at large and New Hampshire. But based out of the current polling that we have from the internal leaked polling from the Democrats, it insinuates that New Hampshire and New Mexico and Virginia would be flipping Republican before Minnesota and Maine. And Virginia does have that Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, who in part probably is making the state winnable for Donald Trump. So you could see a scenario where Donald Trump does good in New Mexico and kind of runs it up in Virginia. A lot of those, rural voters, that kind of enthusiasm for Trump may cross over into the southern part of Virginia. Meanwhile, states like Minnesota, Maine at large may be a little bit closer for the most part. But effectively, this is kind of what I see my map at as of right now. Donald Trump with 347 to Biden's 191. And the state polling that we've done, when you adjust for error and kind of factor in third-party candidates, it would actually make perfect sense for this to end up being the case. And there's another model that Gold Crown Politics actually kind of put together. It's actually using a fundamental system that has been pretty decent to track presidential elections. Essentially, what ends up, there's a thing where basically candidates that are incumbent presidents tend to line up with their approval rating in terms of their national vote share. So Donald Trump had a 46% approval rating. He ended up getting 47% in the national popular vote. In 2012, Obama had a 50% approval rating. He ended up getting 51%. And if we see George W. Bush in 2004 had around, a 49.5% approval rating, he ended up getting 50.7%. So incumbents tend to outperform their expectations when it comes to the third party, when it comes to their national vote share. They tend to outperform their approval by a point. Now, Clinton in 1996 actually ended up having a 54% approval rating, but he only ended up getting 49% because the third-party candidates actually took a decent amount of votes away from him. So that is something to also know as well. And so when you go over here, you actually see that, okay, let's look at Biden's current approval, which is 40%, and let's say, okay, let's give him an extra point because that's usually what incumbents do. And this isn't even factoring in the fact he could even underperform his national job approval. And if we were to say, okay, the national vote share for the RCP, is about 13% for third-party candidates right now. All the third-party candidates end up adding up to 13%. Now, yes, I expect this to go down. However, I don't think it's going to go down all the way to just 5%. I don't think Kennedy's going to get 3 or 4%. We have a range of 7 to 10.5% for third-party candidates. Guys, keep in mind, we're like 3.5 months away from the election. Usually, third-party candidates would have already fallen, collectively at like 7-8% by this time. But that doesn't seem to be the case. All the third-party candidates are still adding up to over 10% right now. And so we actually see that the most likely outcome would be 9.75. So it's like, okay, if Biden is going to outperform his job approval, which is 40%, if he does a point better, right, and the third-party vote share ends up being within this range, 9.75 to be the most likely, the only possible explanation for Trump's vote share would be to get the rest. I mean, that's just basically what it would be, because you would add these up and it's like, okay, if you get 50.75, you need to find the rest that would add up to the total vote share. So Donald Trump's most likely projected vote share would end up being 49.25%, and he's gotten in the high 46s before with a pretty low approval rating. And when you actually look at recall approvals for him, so like they can ask people, okay, what's his favorable rating, for example, and though people will say, 42, 43, but when you ask people what was his recall approval, like when you ask them, what do you think of the job he did as president during his tenure, you end up getting something like, you get like the low 50s, which is very impressive because he left with a 37% job approval. Donald Trump basically left office as popular as he was back in 2016, but he's basically gone up since that, and now his recall approval is like 10 points higher than his favorability rating at times. Now, you actually even see, when you go by approvals, it tends to be a more accurate way of actually predicting elections. The spread of their favorabilities tend to be a pretty accurate way of predicting the popular vote. And you see Donald Trump, in the latest liberal leading pollster from ABC News, Donald Trump is at 40%, Joe Biden at 32%. That's an 8-point spread, pretty close to the 9-point victory that I have. Even the state of Michigan, a new poll that was conducted from Michigan actually ended up seeing Donald Trump leading Joe Biden by 7 points without third parties in the state, which is actually pretty crazy because Donald Trump has narrowly won the state before. Joe Biden won the state by 3 points. So that is crazy. And we see here Donald Trump has the same lead with third-party candidates included. So that is a very impressive lead in the state of Michigan, and would actually line up with Pennsylvania being around R+8 because Michigan tends to vote to the left of Pennsylvania. So that poll would even actually make sense compared to the analysis that I did on my own poll here in Pennsylvania as well. So if you guys did enjoy the video and this analysis, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.